Hey, Dr. Mike here. So if you want to live forever-ish, you got to know what's in and what's not. Stay tuned to find out.
You're listening to Live Foreverish, a show dedicated to helping you live just a little longer. Here's your hosts, Dr. Mike and Dr. Crystal Gossard.
All right, welcome to Live Forever-ish. This is the ins and outs of living strong, vibrant, long lives. And on today's show, we're going to talk about polycystic ovarian syndrome, PEA for pain, Kimchi, and what you don't want, an overactive bladder. Dr. Crystal, this is one of our favorites.
I know. I love the latest and greatest health information. We talk about it all the time, and it's nice to be able to share it with our listeners.
Right. And this is a lot of the stuff we share. This is up-to-date stuff. This often comes from reviews and studies that are brand new and coming out, being published. So let's get started and talk about the first one. I mentioned we're going to talk about polycystic ovarian syndrome and specifically how omega-3s might be helpful.
Yes.
It's a little bit about this.
Well, first, let's just talk about PCOS. I think that's a good place to start. Great, Dr. Mike?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, PCOS, we know, well, we actually talked about this before with a guest a few podcasts ago. And, ultimately, there's a lot of reasons for it, but it really boils down to insulin issues and sugar issues, right?
Right. Most people, women are diagnosed by their gynecologist. They're probably on birth control. But as our speaker, or as our last podcast guest mentioned, that was Dr. Efrat Lamondre.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Dr. E. Yeah.
Dr. E. She said it's a metabolic issue, which makes sense that omega-3s could potentially be helpful. It's an endocrine issue, impacts a woman's reproductive, metabolic, mental health, also can cause menstrual irregularities, fertility issues, and many other conditions. And what you find is this metabolic syndrome that occurs as well. And it all stems back to elevated insulin in most people, the insulin resistance type of PCOS. We do see about 50 to 70% of women with PCOS accompanied with this insulin resistance.
Yeah, and I think, just in my opinion, when they get tested for these, for it, doctors should be checking fasting insulin, all that kind of stuff. And here's the thing that I think all doctors need to remember. If somebody has the symptoms and somebody maybe has proven ultrasound PCOS, but maybe their insulin level isn't high, it doesn't matter. You see it, that you can see that they have PCOS and they do have an insulin issue, even though the labs may not totally support it.
Right. Yes, you do see that. And it's such a complex syndrome. I think the word syndrome is nice in this case. Sometimes we don't like those health concerns that they classify it as a syndrome, which sometimes makes it seem like it's not real. But this is real. It's a syndrome because people present differently in different ways. Sometimes you do have the cysts. Sometimes the cysts aren't present. But one thing that we do know, omega-3s can help.
They do. And so this was a review of several randomized controlled trials looking at the effect of omega-3s on insulin metabolism, lipid metabolism in women with PCOS. So this is an intent to treat type of study, an intervention type of study. I think 11 RCTs?
Yes.
Yeah, 11, about a little over 800 patients. Tell us what they found.
Yeah, so compared with the control group, women who received the omega-3 supplements experienced reductions in waist circumference, fasting plasma insulin, which is often not tested, but should be, fasting glucose, insulin resistance, triglycerides, total cholesterol, and LDL. So again, compared to the control group, in these 11 studies, so this was a meta-analysis that kind of evaluated the results found in these 11 studies and kind of pull the results together. Compared to the control group, the omega-3s experienced reductions in all of those parameters. And I think that's just amazing because you do find women who have PCOS have central abdominal obesity, more of that visceral fat. Their triglycerides are through the roof, LDL's high, cholesterol's high. I mean, it's the full-on metabolic syndrome presentation, including elevated blood pressure. So to see that something as simple as the omega-3s, it's a foundation nutrient for us, Dr. Mike.
I've been taking it for years, every single day, and I know you have too, right? I mean, and they were taking this, I think, for at least 8 weeks was the average or something.
Right.
And at least 1,000 milligrams of omega, which I know we both think that's a little low, actually.
Right. So just when they kind of looked at the subgroups, that's the dose greater than 1,000 milligrams of the omega-3s was where they really saw most of those benefits for at least 8 weeks. So give it a try. Again, that was published in the Journal of Ovarian Research, March 2023. So again, new research.
Listen, I don't, you don't have to agree with me or not, but I think if you're listening to this and this is something you're interested in, try and talk to your doctor first, right? Always does it. I think you should at least target at least 2,000 milligrams, probably up. That's kind of our standard foundational dose rate, right?
Right. That's total omega-3 fats. And then, of course, that breaks down into EPA and DHA.
Yeah, and DHA. All right. Well, there you go. PCOS and omegas. Let's move on to something. I don't know if people know this. We have talked about it before in the past. It's PEA. It's a naturally occurring fat. It's found in some food, but it's made by your body, and turns out it might be pretty good for chronic pain management, which is very challenging to treat.
Very true. We've talked about PEA. I think it's been years, Dr. Mike. I don't think we give PEA enough shine.
Yeah.
We are talking about it more as it relates to pet health, but that'll be in another podcast, I'm sure, helping with supporting joint comfort in our furry friends, but it also can support comfort in humans as well. And it's an up and coming fatty acid. And this is also what we're reviewing is a systematic and meta-analysis.
Yeah. Again, it's that collection of studies, right? We talk about these a lot. It's pooling of data. You're getting more people, more subjects, and the more of all of that, the more you can have confidence in the results at the end of the day. Yeah. So this, so what do we find in this? So we had, I think the PEA was studied so they were looking for studies where you had PEA in comparison to placebo or something they were already taking. We call that an active control, say like ibuprofen. Is that correct?
That is correct. There was in the collection of studies, there were also 11 studies selected. Now, that's a coincidence. It's so funny when you look at these meta-analysis. They usually start off with hundreds of studies.
Yes. Yeah.
But what I like about these researchers, they excluded a study if it was not double-blinded. They excluded animal model studies. They looked at bias in the studies to determine whether or not it fit the criteria to be included in their meta-analysis. So the lucky number 11, is that a lucky number? I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, I guess you could have your own lucky number if you want it to be 11. That's fine. But
11 double
coincidence. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so they looked at, pain caused from things like gynecological disorders, neurologic, carpal tunnel. I have the list here: MS, neuropathy, specifically from diabetes, joint issues, knee issues, irritable bowel, and then of course they say others. But I think a key point I think we should make is, it wasn't that long ago that chronic pain really wasn't considered a condition or disease. It was just an extension of the original insult or disease, right? But now
Right.
we're really starting to see chronic disease as something that there may have been an initiation, there may be a main reason, but think of chronic pain as its own entity and focus on not just treating maybe the arthritis, but also doing things like PEA for the chronic pain at the same time.
I agree. And it's nice to see a variety of studies. I don't think that when out of the 11 studies, there was no particular study or type of pain that was focused on more, which is why you see that long list. Each study was identifying PEA's effect for that particular health concern. And so going back to where you were talking about that active control, one of the 11 studies did compare PEA to ibuprofen, which
Very common. Yeah.
it's just amazing. The rest were compared to placebo. But we did have one where it compared it to ibuprofen. People take that in the study, 600 milligrams 3 times a day was the ibuprofen dose compared to the PEA. And there was a significant reduction compared to ibuprofen after 14 days.
Yeah. And that's that's quick too. That's quick.
Right.
Yeah. So PEA, so the overall conclusion is PEA, again, this natural fat. We don't need to get into exactly how it's working, but it's working with something that's called immune modulated inflammation, right? It's coming from this inflammation is a little different than systemic. It's driven from these immune cells that remain too active at the site, et cetera, et cetera. I think one of the cells are called mast cells, right? And so PEA is this natural fat that your body uses to control all that a little, right? And so we're just giving you a little more, and it does seem to work. So compared to placebo, PEA was great, and then even compared to ibuprofen, it was better. I mean, at the end of the day,
Right. And nice, no major side effect in the PEA studies.
yeah. I know a lot of people too with things like fibromyalgia, some of these kind of chronic pain conditions. I have a friend who's going through this, and a lot of the mainstream medicine focuses on the fact that there's an inflammatory component to, like, say, fibromyalgia, which is what she has. And that may be, I'm not saying that's not true. That I think there is some evidence for that. However, when she does all of her labs, her inflammatory markers aren't elevated. They look okay. So then they're like, well, maybe this is in chronic, fibromyalgia. And I was telling her about this. I was like, you know what? It could be an immune modulated inflammation. And you may not see a rise in some of those common systemic inflammatory markers like CRP as an example. So I'm going to make sure she tries this. Yeah.
For sure.
Safe and a lot of good research on that. All right. So that was N number 2. N number 3. Ooh, I love some kimchi.
Oh, you do?
Oh, I love kimchi.
Do.
I love the hot, spicy kimchi too.
For sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me and you are spicy. We like that.
Now, the life extension in our health and wellness market, we sell a really good spicy kimchi.
Yeah.
Nice and clean.
Just, I love the way the flavor, the taste, the crunch, even the little gassiness to it. I don't know how to describe it. No, not in me. I mean, when you're eating it, it's like it's alive.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Crystal.
Yeah.
Oh, it does happen sometimes. But no, I'm talking about it's fermented. It's fermentation that's a great way to get nutrition and, cook and work with food, right?
Yeah, I think it's a fun way to get your vegetables. Kimchi is a traditional Korean side dish consisting of salted and fermented vegetables, most often cabbage. I've never seen it commercially available with anything other than cabbage.
Yeah.
But it's salty, it's sour from the vinegar that's produced through the fermentation process. It's definitely savory with all of the garlic and the ginger and the scallion and
You're making me hungry.
chili flakes, fish sauce. Oh, it is just an amazing delight. If you've never,
it's good. Listen, these fermented foods like that, they're good for your stomach. They're good for your digestion overall. They help to improve microbiome environment. I mean, this is fermented foods. This is for millennia.
Yes.
Because it was a way to preserve things, but it was also very helpful at the end of the day, right? Now when you look at a serving of kimchi, what kind of, being the doctor of clinical nutrition, what kind of nutrients are we like? What am I getting out of that?
Well, you're getting all of the live bacteria,
Right.
the beneficial gut bugs, right? That's produced through that lacto fermentation. You're also getting protein, fiber, vitamin K is produced during that fermentation process. Live enzymes, folate, iron, vitamin C, B6. I mean, it's just jam-packed with nutrition.
Yeah, it's so good. And it's low overall. I mean, you get carbs from the veggies, but because they don't add, it's just water and salt basically, right? They're not adding sugars and stuff. I don't think they are, because I don't think the sugar content's very high in any of it.
Right. No, because the bacteria takes the sugar naturally found in the vegetables and then converts that. So you're not getting the sugar. Of course, you'll get some salt. So if you're salt sensitive, maybe you should be careful with the salt content, but you are just getting lots of vitamins, minerals, some protein, and it's low calorie because at the end of the day, you're eating vegetables, Dr. Mike.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It will, and it's fermentation. So it's vegetables and fermentation, two great ways to stay healthy, right?
Yeah.
So we had 100 people. This is in the Journal of Medicinal Food, 2013. 100 people consumed 15 to 210 grams. That's a pretty big range. It's a pretty big range daily for just 1 week, and they experienced decreases in blood sugar and total cholesterol. And
Yeah.
of course, the more they eat, the better the result.
Yeah, I don't mind the range because that means I don't have to. My kids are not a fan of kimchi because it's stinky.
Yeah, they will.
I
They
have to
will.
have that much.
Yeah, and then you mentioned the salt content too. For those that are salt sensitive, maybe you're watching salt intake. You can still eat it, just maybe do half the serving or
Right.
something like that, right? Okay. And then there was another study, right? This is the Journal of Nutrition Research from 2011. This was an overweight people, right?
Yeah, 22 overweight people. A small study, but it's just showing that kimchi. Yeah, there is some research. Those overweight individuals added kimchi to their diets for 4 weeks. It led to a reduction in body weight, body mass index, and body fat. Also, a decrease in blood sugar levels and improvements in blood pressure
For sure.
reading.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah. And I wonder, I think a lot of that body composition result is, I mean, we could theorize like what's going on, but some of it is maybe the kimchi fills you up. Maybe you're not snacking as much, right? But then a better microbiome in the gut also is helpful for body composition. So I think it's probably working through a lot of different mechanisms.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
it could be that the capsaicin in the red chili,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's boosting the metabolism. I think there are several kind of mechanisms of action that just goes along with eating this good fermented veggie.
Yeah. So there you go. Those are the 3 N's. These are things you want to do, add to your diet. I haven't had kimchi in a while. I'm thinking I might have to go out and get some.
I know.
Gotten it kind of made me hungry. But now let's get into the thing we call the out. This is what we don't want, things we want to avoid, treat immediately, those kind of things, because they're going to hamper your effort to live foreverish. And in this case, it's overactive bladder. Tell us about why we chose this.
Well, it's a new study, May of 2023, published in the journal Nutritional Reviews. It's an association study, so we should probably make that clear that this is not a cause and effect type of relationship that we're seeing here. But in this systematic review and meta-analysis, it showed an association between higher vitamin D levels and a lower risk of overactive bladder or urinary incontinence. And I thought this was an important study to include because people aren't talking about overactive bladder as much as they should, I think, and for a lot of dealing with this.
They're embarrassed. They don't want to bring that kind of stuff up with their doctors, and they just kind of deal with it, right? They go and they buy what they need for adult diapers or whatever, and they just kind of, they do their best to stay active and stay doing things. But there are people, Dr. Crystal, with the overactive bladder that be kind of like isolate.
Yeah.
Because they're always nervous. I know I have a couple friends that don't like to travel. They don't want to get on a plane because they're going to have to use the bathroom like nonstop, and it's just they don't like it. So I think it's not just the physical component. There's a social and emotional component to it as well.
Right. And so they're going nonstop. And then, of course, there's this urgent need to empty the bladder as well. It may not be incontinence, but it's just that urgency. And I know people, Dr. Mike, as well. I have a friend, when we go somewhere, they have to identify the bathroom.
Yes. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Where it is and make sure I can quickly get there.
Yeah, so it's not. So now with this association, and again, I thought you said it perfectly that this is not cause and effect. Listen, association or observational studies are important in science. They're basically the things that drive hypothesis, right? So from this, you think, okay, here's this observation. They noticed people with the higher vitamin D levels had less prevalence of overactive bladder. So now you think, okay, could vitamin D be a treatment? Could we now do a study where we're giving certain increasing doses of vitamin D to different groups of people and seeing if there's actually a decrease in urgency?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's why associations studies are really important. Was there anything interesting that you wanted to talk about from this study?
No, I think you kind of summarized it. You saw a two-way connection that people who were deficient had a 30% greater risk of incontinence. So that is something to bring up, because we talked about the overactive bladder doesn't necessarily mean incontinence.
Yeah, right.
We do see that connection, and that was compared to those who are not deficient. And then, what you mentioned, that the effects of vitamin D supplementation, there was a 66% lower risk of incontinence. So, hey, vitamin D, it's another foundational nutrient, Dr. Mike, that we suggest people add in. If you're not, you should.
Yeah.
If you haven't tested, you should. And just make sure you're optimizing your levels.
Absolutely. I was doing too much. Remember I told you that? My vitamin D level came back like 130 or something.
Yes.
And my calcium level was up a little bit. Interesting.
Oh.
Yeah, just a little. Yeah, I was like, oh.
Okay.
So I stopped that dose. I don't do quite as much now, and it's time for me to retest.
Yes.
Kind of see where I'm at. So yeah, that's the one thing about vitamin D. It's think of it as a hormone, and you want it because it's a pro-hormone, right? That's kind of how it's classified. So you want to check those levels. And I always like to remind people, there is a vitamin D receptor on just about every different type of cell line or tissue in the human body. That means it's pretty important.
Right.
Yeah. Probably want to optimize those levels. But then we have there's three others. This was from Dr. Tracy Seipel, right?
Yeah, I just I included that just because of the conversation about the overactive bladder, and there are other things that can be helpful, and so just wanted to give a thank you to Dr. Seipel. She's a naturopath, and she has done a lot of research in this field of women's health, overactive bladder, or lower urinary tract symptoms as a whole. And there's some other herbs that I just wanted to shout out. Horsetail, lindera, 3-leaf caper.
Right.
That combination seems to be very beneficial for those looking for other nutrients to offer support.
Right, perfect. There is your 3 ins and an out, right? This is how we're going to live forever-ish, right? Strong, vibrant, energetic lives. That's what Dr. Crystal and I, we shoot for. That's kind of it's our goal. We hope it's your goal too. Our sponsor, Life Extension, would like to thank our listeners with a special 10% off discount at lifeextension.com. All you got to do is go to lifeextension.com, buy what you want, go to your cart, and type in at checkout podcast. That's it, podcast. And you can redeem 10% off. You have to spend at least $50, right? $50, and then you can get 10% off and free shipping on your entire order. So thank Life Extension for that. And don't forget, we post every Monday, right? LiveForeverish.com. We have new podcasts, well over 400 now. Go check it out. When you do, download, like, share, comment, and of course, subscribe so you never miss a show. That's LiveForeverish.com. I'm Dr. Mike, and that's Dr. Crystal. Thanks for listening.